Let's say you want to make a cloud storage service, something like Google Drive. So you set up a server that clients can send read and write requests to, and that machine can handle the commands one at a time on its local file system. For a while, this works, although you do get some complaints of high latency from people far away. But one day, this machine fails. Maybe it had a software update, or maybe the power went out, and now, because of this single point of failure, your whole system goes offline. So maybe you keep multiple identical replicas of the system on different machines. Then people in different locations can connect to the closest server, and if some servers go down, they can still access the others. Now, to keep things consistent, whenever a server gets a request, it should also broadcast that request to the other servers, so that they can commit the command to their local databases. But now imagine this. Alice requests server A to name a file Alice's paper, while at the same time, Bob requests server B to name it Bob's essay. During the broadcast, different servers get the requests in different orders, and now the machines have conflicting file names. There's no consensus on the state of the system. This is a famously difficult problem. Anytime you need a distributed system to agree on some value, in this case the order of commands, you need consensus. Leslie Lamport, the inventor of LaTeX, won a Turing Award, the Nobel Prize of Computing, partly for inventing the solution, Paxos. If you look at our example, you'll notice that 2 out of 3 of our servers actually agree on the order of commands. That's an absolute majority. So maybe, before committing the commands, we should make the servers wait, at least until they're sure that a majority agree on their order, like a majority voting system. Let's sketch out a toy example. It won't be the correct solution, but it'll help us understand how voting would work. We'll use slot numbers to keep track of the order of commands. So when Alice asks server A to rename the file, server A looks at its local command log and picks the first slot that it hasn't committed a command into yet, in this case, slot 2. Then it proposes a ballot saying, hey, I want to set the command at slot 2 to be this rename command. Server A doesn't commit the command quite yet. First, it has to send the ballot out to check if the system has already chosen a command for slot 2, in which case it should update its own log and file system and retry the ballot with slot 3. If an absolute majority of the servers accept the ballot, then we say the system has chosen that command for slot 3. The system should never choose a different command for this slot ever again. Let's unpack a few things here. First, the server that starts the ballot is called the proposer. Any server with the ability to vote is an acceptor. Choosing acceptors is a design choice, but in most implementations, every server is an acceptor. We say the system chooses a ballot or proposal when a majority of the acceptors vote for or accept it. In Paxos, we call these majorities quorums because technically you can set things up so you don't need majorities, but in most implementations, quorums are majorities. This is because the key idea behind Paxos is that any 2 quorums should always have at least one server in common. Like here, server B is in both quorum 1 and quorum 2. You can guarantee this property by forcing quorums to be majorities. Each majority contains more than 1/2 of the acceptors, so any 2 majorities have to overlap. If they didn't, then their combined size would be more than the original total, which is impossible. Second, notice that the servers don't actually know that the system has chosen anything yet. Or actually, maybe in our toy example, server B might realize that 2 out of 3 servers voted, counting itself and the proposer. But generally, it's impossible for a single server to know if a log slot has been chosen, unless it gets sent the votes. The servers that the acceptors send their votes to are called learners. That's another design choice, but usually the proposer is also a learner. Once a learner learns that a ballot has been chosen, it tells everyone to commit. Now, if an acceptor gets multiple proposals for the same slot, which ballots should it vote on? This gets hard to keep track of, so I'm going to put the votes on a table where the columns are the different ballots for slot 2 and the rows are the acceptors. So if we let the acceptors accept multiple ballots, which on the table looks like having multiple votes in one row, then the system might choose multiple conflicting commands for the same slot. But if we only let them accept the first ballot they receive for slot 2, there might be no ballot that reaches a quorum. Each acceptor receives the ballots in a different order, and the system just gets stuck. So instead of basing it on the order the ballots are received, What if the acceptors base it on some other universal ordering? Like maybe the proposers generate a unique numerical identifier for each ballot on slot 2, so that no two ballots for the same slot could ever have the same number. There are many ways you could implement something like that. Could we then get the acceptors to only vote on the highest numbered ballot? Well, in order to do that, the acceptors have to know beforehand what ballot numbers are coming. Like, if an acceptor gets ballot 6 first, it has to know that ballot 8 for slot 2 is coming in order to reject it. So how about this? When a proposer wants to send a ballot out, first it has to tell the acceptors, hey, I'm planning to send ballot 8 in the future, so don't vote on anything less than 8 for slot 2. I'll call this a prepare message. So server C asks the acceptors to prepare for ballot 8 on slot 2. When an acceptor gets a prepare message, it should respond with a promise, saying, okay, I got your message. From now on, if I get a ballot less than 8 for slot 2, I'll reject it. The acceptors should keep track of their highest promise for each slot. I've assigned arbitrary promises to slots 0 and 1, and let's say server E has already made a previous promise for slot 2 to reject anything less than 5. Now, when it gets this prepare request, it can just remember the highest ballot number, 8, and forget the 5, and it'll still fulfill both promises, since rejecting anything less than 8 also implies rejecting anything less than 5. Once a proposer receives a promise from a quorum of acceptors, it asks those acceptors to accept its ballot. If an acceptor hasn't promised a higher number for slot 2, it accepts. Let's walk through an example. I'm going to remove the file systems because they take up a lot of space. So server A generates the ballot number 0 and sends a prepare request for slot 2 to some quorum Q1. Q1 promises 0. At the same time, server B prepares 6, Q2 promises 6, server C prepares 8, and Q3 promises 8. The proposers send out their ballots, but only ballot 8 can be chosen. Pause and think about why this is. The quorum intersection property guarantees that Q1 shares an element with Q3. So even if server A asks Q1 to accept ballot 0, at least one acceptor in Q1 will refuse, because it already promised 8. So ballot 0 can never reach a quorum of votes, and the same thing happens to ballot 6. So that works in that case, but this protocol can still break in subtle ways. Imagine this. Server A prepares 0, gets promises from Q1, and asks Q1 to accept. But maybe there are some network problems this time, so server A accepts right away, but it takes a bit for servers D and E to get the message. In the meantime, server B prepares 6, gets promises from Q2, and asks Q2 to accept. Servers B and D accept right away, but it takes a bit for server E to get the message. In the meantime, server C prepares 8, and servers C and E promise 8. If we maintain the safety rule that acceptors should not vote on multiple ballots for the same slot, then it is now impossible for any ballot to ever achieve a quorum on slot 2. Server D can't vote again. The system is stuck forever. But let's entertain a different idea. Making the acceptors only vote once is misguided. It's actually okay if two different ballots for the same slot are chosen, as long as they have the same command. That may seem useless right now, but here's the idea. What if server D does promise 8, but it also tells server C, hey, I already voted on ballot 6 for slot 2. When server C hears this, it should realize, okay, some ballot for slot 2 has already been voted on. That ballot might end up chosen, so I shouldn't send out my own command because that could cause a conflict. But on the other hand, that ballot might not end up chosen. So I can't just sit back and do nothing either, because then slot 2 might never get filled. So I should still send out a ballot, but to be safe, I should copy over this ballot's command and replace my own. That way, if it turns out that ballot 6 is indeed chosen, it's still safe for ballot 8 to be chosen as well. If I want, I can retry my own command with slot 3 once I finalize whatever's in slot 2. So, every time an acceptor sends a promise, it should also send along with it whatever ballots it's already voted on for that slot, so that the proposer can copy over the command. Now, what if a proposer receives a set of different prior votes? Like, what if server D says, I voted for ballot 0, while server E says, I voted for ballot 6? When server C proposes its ballot, which command should it copy? If you try out a couple ideas, you might stumble upon the right answer. Just copy the highest numbered prior vote you see. If there are no prior votes, then keep the original command. The result of this is that all the ballots the system chooses for the same slot will have the same command. But if you want a rigorous proof of why that works, you'll have to think through a few cases. To help us reason through it, I'm going to build a proposal table. Every time a command for slot 2 gets proposed, I'll add its ballot number and command as a column, and I'll order the columns by their ballot number. Whenever we add a column, we color it green if it's going to be chosen. Now, that's obviously impossible to predict, but this is a conceptual tool for us to prove that our protocol works. For this proof, you'll just have to imagine that you somehow know the future. What we want is simple. All the green commands should be the same. If 2 ballots for the same slot both end up chosen, they should have the same command. Here's how Paxos guarantees this. You see the lowest numbered green ballot, ballot 3? If the proposers follow our protocol, always copying the highest prior vote they see, then it turns out that every single ballot for slot 2 that's numbered higher than 3 will have the same command as ballot 3. I'll call this the safety condition. Any column in our proposal table that's to the right of a green column must have the same command as that green column. So let's prove that our proposal table always has the safety condition. First, the safety condition is obviously true in the initial state when the table is empty. Then we want to show that anytime any proposer proposes a command, as long as the safety condition held before, then it still holds after we add the column to the table. So for example, let's say server C wants to propose ballot 8 for slot 2. We're assuming that the safety condition has held so far for all the existing ballots for slot 2, and we just got back our promises from some quorum. Is it possible that proposing ballot 8 breaks our safety condition? Well, there are only 2 ways that adding a column could break the condition. One, if there's a ballot less than 8 that's green and has a different command than ballot 8, or 2, if ballot 8 is green and some ballot higher than 8 has a different command. Let's take case 1 first. So say ballot 3 is in our table and is green. We have to show that ballot 8 is guaranteed to copy ballot 3's command. If ballot 3 is green, then at some point in time, some quorum Q1 of acceptors has to vote on it. But remember that we're also assuming that some quorum Q2 has promised us 8. At least one server will be in both Q1 and Q2. Here, that's server D. The only way for that server to vote on ballot 3 is if it already voted before promising 8. Then, when it later sends us its promise, it has to tell us, hey, I already voted on ballot 3. So, if ballot 3 ends up chosen, then it must be one of the prior votes we see. That means the highest prior vote is either ballot 3 or a ballot higher than 3. If it is ballot 3, then ballot 8 will copy ballot 3's command, which is what we want. If it's a ballot higher than 3, well, the safety condition guarantees that any ballot higher than 3 has the same command as 3. Remember, we're assuming that the safety condition has held so far for all the other ballots. So ballot 8 will still copy ballot 3's command. So we've proven case 1, that is, if a smaller ballot will end up chosen, the proposer is guaranteed to copy it. How about case 2? Is it possible that ballot 8 will be chosen while a higher ballot in our table, say ballot 9, has a different command? Well, in order for ballot 9 to be in our table, some proposer must have already gotten a quorum Q1 to promise 9. That means ballot 8 can never get votes from a quorum Q2. At least one acceptor in Q2 will reject it because it already promised 9. So ballot 8 can never be chosen. And that proves both cases. If there's a smaller ballot that'll end up chosen, the proposer is guaranteed to copy it. If there's already a higher ballot, the proposer's ballot can never be chosen. Anytime we propose a command for the slot, our proposal table still maintains the safety condition, and only one command will ever be chosen for each slot. And that is Paxos, or at least the bare bones description. There are lots of failure modes and optimizations to consider. In particular, most systems implement multi-paxos. Before, we were preparing slots one by one. Every time a proposer wanted to push a new command, it generated a new prepare request. But proposers can actually prepare slots preemptively. If a proposer prepares every single possible slot all at once in one combined message at the start, then the acceptors will give a promise for every slot. From then on, as long as you funnel each request through that distinguished proposer, you can just send the accept requests. All the prepare and promise messages for each slot were already taken care of. You do need extra logic to detect when the distinguished proposer fails, though. Like, if a server stops seeing messages from the distinguished proposer, that server can try to take over the log by generating a higher ballot number and preparing every slot that it hasn't already committed. As long as the acceptors still send over their previous votes for the proposer to copy, Paxos guarantees that this is safe, even if multiple proposers try to take over. I've glossed over a lot of important details in this video, so I left some further resources in the description. But I hope the protocol that set the foundation for so many of the services we rely on makes a bit more sense. Hey, I know I took 2 years to post this video. It's because I started college. If you're wondering what I've been up to, I'm working on this rhythm game where you sight read sheet music. I might post updates to Twitter at GentGent. If you want to support me, I'd appreciate anything you can give at the links in the description. Other than that, thank you for watching.